Week zero takeaways, plus other news and notes from across the country on Good Morning College Football. Hello and welcome to episode 86 of Good Morning College Football from campus2canton.com. I am Nicholas Ian Allen, and we are, knocking off the rust of a long off season. We are back officially after week zero of the 2024 college football season kicked off over the weekend. 4 games featuring FBS opponents, including a major upset in the very first game of the season. Georgia Tech knocking off the number 10 in the national polls, number 7 in our CFB Winning Edge team strength power ratings, Florida State Seminoles. So the season is off to an unexpected start as far as results go. We also had favorites struggle throughout the day, and a couple other major upsets nearly came to fruition. But first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for subscribing to the Campus to Canton YouTube channel and for giving this video a like. And then, of course, thank you to our members at campus2canton.com, where you can join for as little as $2.99 per month. Get access to a wide range of content on the site, written content, news and notes, other pieces that focus on analysis, specific college fantasy football, Devy, and the Campus to Canton version of the game, of course, where you have both a college side and NFL side of your fantasy team. Get access to rankings, including best ball rankings, all the underdog fantasy rankings there as well. Tools. I always struggle to exactly pare down everything because we offer so much at campus2canton.com, and a large amount of it is available to that lowest tier that starts at just $2.99 per month. But of course, we've got a range of tiers that go all the way up to our C2C Winning Edge and all 22 tiers that get you access to our CFB Winning Edge team profiles, a returning production database, which is just about final now that almost every FBS team is kicking off this week. And then our stat projections, which may come in handy if you're looking at those underdog higher or lower, player props, other things out there. Another piece of information to refer to based on our projections of a 3-year window for each team, head coach, and play caller. And then, of course, those and all the other rankings and everything on the site get updated each week as we learn more as the games happen. And with that in mind, we do have games to discuss. As I'm sure you saw, Florida State was upset in its first game of the college football season. And, it's understandable. It happens every single year. We're all tuned in. We've been waiting, 228 days or something for, the 2024 season to begin. There's only one game. It's, national news or, national broadcast. Everyone is tuned in. Everyone is focused. Everyone is, paying attention to every little detail. And it can be, it's natural, I think, to react and draw grand conclusions from the opening snap and when things play out as they did with the Seminoles, again ranked number 10 in the AP poll, ranked number 7 in our team strength power ratings. And as we discussed on Friday, our CFB Winning Edge models all had Florida State expected to cover the 10.5 point spread that was current as of the end of the week. According to the odds makers, it obviously did not work out that way, but there's a feeling of the need maybe for some to react and try to pull out these major takeaways. And obviously, we're going to discuss some of our takeaways from this game. But I tweeted this out on Sunday, and I'm not sure exactly how it came off, but did just sort of want to keep in mind, we only saw 4 games featuring FBS teams. There were 6 FBS teams that took the field. So only 4% of the FBS population, 6 out of the 134 FBS teams, played. Also, those teams only played 8% of their 12 regular season games on Saturday. So I think it is important to one, try to learn as much as we can from every opportunity. And when you're hyper focused on a game, you're not going to miss a lot of details. But I do think that it's important to keep in mind that this was a very, very small sample, not just for Florida State, but for every team that we saw. And as much as we love having college football back, as much as we probably did, learn some things that either we had wrong or able to adjust our expectations moving forward on these teams, it is important to note that these teams themselves and the rest of the college football world as a whole, it's going to change a lot, because we still have 90, I forget the numbers I just said, 96% or something of teams yet to play, and all those teams between 100 and 92% of their seasons still to go. So with that in mind, it was a very, very rough start for Florida State. DJ Uyunglele, the transfer from Oregon State, previously Clemson, has taken a fair amount of heat, and he was a question mark coming into the game for sure. Finished 19 of 27 for 193 yards, 7.1 yards per pass attempt. In the first half, the game plan was very basic as far as getting the ball out quickly in the passing game. The completion numbers were decent, but the average depth of target very, very low. In the second half, things changed a bit. Tried to attack some down the field. I believe DJU had a double-digit average depth of target in the second half, after being very, very small, 1 or 2 yards in the first half. That said, Florida State struggled to get the running game going, and Manny Navarro of The Athletic pointed out some stats that indicate how far this Georgia Tech run defense has come, at least in game 1. After last season, allowing an average of 221 rushing yards per game, which ranked 131st among FBS teams, and also allowing 5.4 yards per carry, which ranked 130th. Florida State averaged just 3.2 yards per rushing attempt and finished with 98 rushing yards on the day. So just one game, one small sample, but Georgia Tech taking a big, big step forward with its new defense this season. And also on the flip side, the Florida State defense, which came in with very high expectations. There's been talk about how this defensive line could be one of the best in the country. But Florida State got very little pressure up front, did not record a sack during the game. Quite frankly, Florida State lost the line of scrimmage. I mean, after the game, Brent Key, head coach of the Yellow Jackets, gave us our first, sort of memeable moment maybe of the season with his run the ball post game quote. But that was, the plan, and was executed very well by Georgia Tech. Another part of the plan, it seems, and Brian Fremeau noted this also on Twitter, that Georgia Tech did a great job of limiting possessions. Fremeau noted that there were only 14 total drives, 7 for each team in the game, which was fewer than any FBS game since November 28th of 2020. So in the 2021 season, 2022, 2023, no game had fewer than 14 total possessions. But Georgia Tech, seemed to be a strategic decision to hold the football, time of possession, all that. There's already some indication that maybe the changes with helmet communication and things like that could have an impact on slowing down the game a little bit. Fremeau also noted there have been only 9 games with 14 or fewer possessions since 2007. So this was a pretty rare outcome, and the numbers for Florida State were not great. There's talk already what to do from a fantasy standpoint with this running back room. The running backs were rotated pretty frequently, especially early on with Roydell Williams, Lawrence Toafili, Jalen Lucas got a couple of carries as well. But Florida State, I think moving forward is going to get a lot more than 58 total plays in a game. So yes, we certainly can draw some conclusions. The numbers weren't great. DJU didn't look super sharp. Looked early like they just weren't quite ready to. I don't know if trust is the right word, but weren't quite ready to open the passing attack up. And certainly, Uyunglele has struggled at time with command and accuracy and things like that. So it makes a certain amount of sense. But also, Georgia Tech had a plan coming in. It had all off season to prepare for this game, and it ended up, working out as well as they possibly could have hoped for. Even though this game was, 24-21 final score, and wasn't decided until that last second walk-off field goal, Florida State had just a 1% chance, according to the college football data.com post-game win expectancy numbers. Georgia Tech 99% chance. If you pull up a site that I really like to look at that breaks down a lot of specific numbers, gameonpaper.com. Georgia Tech, they put side-by-side columns of things like EPA per play, success rate, yards per play, EPA per drop back, EPA per rush, yards per drop back, explosive play rate, third down success rate, red zone success rate, defensive run stuff rate, havoc rate, and give you color-coded. Green is good, purple's bad, and then the percentage where those stats would rank Georgia Tech, almost all green. 92nd percentile in EPA per play, 98th percentile in success rate, 92nd percentile in EPA per drop back pass, 86 in yards per drop back, 81st third down success rate, 91st in red zone success rate. So Georgia Tech just limited the possessions of its opponent, and then also capitalized on its own possessions, and really put up great efficiency numbers. Florida State on the other side of things, yards per play was a bit of a struggle. 5.02 yards per play in the 28th percentile, according to Game on Paper. EPA per rushing attempt was below 0, negative 0.17, which is in the 21st percentile. The defensive run stuff rate, just 14%, which was in the first percentile. So really, really struggled to limit that Georgia Tech rushing attack, and Georgia Tech was able to stay on schedule, keep moving the chains, and control the line of scrimmage really on both sides of the football. But to the surprise of most, really running the football. Jamal Haynes finished with 75 yards on 11 carries, had 2 touchdowns. Haynes King, 54 yards, ended up winning MVP honors for the game, but put up the solid, not spectacular numbers overall. 146 passing yards, 9.1 yards per pass attempt. So that success running the football also helped create a couple of big plays through the air. Malik Rutherford, leading receiver for the game, 4 catches, 66 yards. So overall, Georgia Tech off to a great start. Big upset. Our numbers were wrong. Our projections had Florida State covering this, and it did not work out. So are we ready to panic? I'm not, quite frankly. It's very possible we are too high on Florida State. It's very possible, we discussed this in our Florida State preview, that our individual player rating at the most important position, DJ Uiagalelei, is too high. Nevertheless, there perhaps is an opportunity here where some weirdness always tends to happen a little bit in that first game of the season. As I said, the opponent, Georgia Tech, quality opponent, certainly conference game, someone who is familiar, or a team that is familiar with this Florida State program. Also, the travel is a rare, situation. Having to, go to another continent to play your first game. It's just an unfamiliar place to be, and I'm not excusing Florida State in any way here. Seminoles were the more talented team, better team, projected to. I say projected to be the better team. They certainly were not the better team by any stretch of the imagination on Saturday, but it was understandable that Florida State, in my opinion, was a double-digit favorite, and they weren't able to get it done. So that said, how will the Seminoles respond? They'll be back on Monday. We project Florida State as a big, more than 2 touchdown favorite over Boston College at home on Monday, September 2nd, the tail end of week 1. But this Florida State team is going to have to bounce back in a big way if it wants to have any shot at some of its preseason goals. But with the change in the 12-team college football playoff, I think Florida State still has all of its goals on the table. This game itself probably puts the Seminoles at a bit of a disadvantage in the ACC championship race. But if Florida State were to go through, win every other game on its schedule 11-1, they're going to be sitting in a pretty spot for a playoff opportunity. And then who knows from there. So a definitely disappointing, first game for the Seminoles. A great first game for Georgia Tech. But on both cases, I sort of want to, me personally, keep my expectations somewhat grounded, and not ready to just completely throw out Florida State as a ACC title contender. I'm not ready to completely buy in on Georgia Tech as a team that's going to compete at the top tier in the ACC. Anything can happen in a one game, especially the first game of the season, especially in sort of a weird travel and location scenario. But this was the first of a few games that we saw where the favorites struggled. On that note, second game of the day, New Mexico hosting Montana State. Montana State, nearly a 2-touchdown favorite in this game, but it was all Lobos early. New Mexico jumped out to a 17-0 lead early in the second quarter. Did get a 41-yard fumble return for a touchdown. Defensive score was huge. Also had a defensive score early in the third quarter where New Mexico was able to extend its lead to 31-14. Looked like it was in control, but 2 defensive touchdowns. There were also, I believe, 3 stops on fourth down for the New Mexico defense. Big plays and very important, obviously, but the rest of the day was a real struggle for New Mexico defensively. And again, this was a kind of similar to that Florida State Georgia Tech game. The final score very, very close, but in the post-game win expectancy numbers, it was clear that Montana State, was the better team on the day. Montana State had a 70% post-game win expectancy number, according to collegefootballdata.com. It's not really a repeatable thing to get multiple defensive touchdowns, get multiple fourth down stops, and then give up as many big plays as New Mexico did. Again, referring to the numbers from GameOnPaper.com. There's a lot of purple on the New Mexico side of things. Explosive play rate, just 24th percentile. 6% explosive play rate. Compare that to Montana State, which was at 10%, which is in the 70th percentile. Doesn't sound like a big change in overall percentage from 10 to 6, but percentile wise, pretty big gap there from 70 to 24. New Mexico also really struggled on third down, just 15% success rate, which was in the 2nd percentile. Also defensive run stuff rate for New Mexico, and this was where Florida State really struggled. New Mexico, same thing, 11%, 0 percentile for the Lobos there. Montana State struggled as well, just 21%, 10th percentile. That was the only stat in which Montana State did not do at least, hit at least the 50th percentile numbers there. They were positive in EPA per play, 55% success rate, 96th percentile, 8.03 yards per play, 92nd percentile, 0.42 EPA per rush, 96th percentile, third down success rate, almost the complete opposite of New Mexico, 62% in the 91st percentile, red zone success rate, 82% in the 95th percentile, havoc rate, they were also on the positive side of things at 11% compared to New Mexico, which had just 3% in the 3rd percentile. So this game was pretty lopsided everywhere but the final score, and Montana State only led for 11 seconds in this game, or 10 seconds even. Gave them even too much credit there. 10 seconds, the final 10 seconds were all the Bobcats needed, and New Mexico let a prime opportunity to get off to a great start in the Bronco Mendenhall era slip through its fingers. Now, as far as individual players go, I think we saw some good things from Devin Dampier. Had the 24-yard touchdown run, great call, great play fake. Just went untouched on basically a short yardage bootleg in that tight formation that they were running. Eli Sanders at running back, 87 yards on 17 carries, the Iowa State transfer. Very impressive. Luke Wysong, big part of that passing attack, had 95 yards on 6 catches. Trace Bruckler, the tight end, had a touchdown catch, 34 yards on 4 catches. Unfortunately, Caleb Medford, who was a returning starter at wide receiver, really didn't see the field all that much, wasn't a big part of the game plan, it seemed. Had just 1 catch for 7 yards and a key drop that likely, had he come down with that third down pass, would have sealed the win for the Lobos. Instead, big drop, have to give the ball back to Montana State. They were able to capitalize late. New Mexico allowed 2 Montana State running backs to go over 140 yards. Adam Jones and Scottrey Humphrey combined for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Jones averaged nearly 10 yards per carry, had that 93-yarder that really was sort of the thing that turned the tide completely. It was starting to trend that way a bit when New Mexico really struggled to move the football in the second half. But that 93-yard touchdown run, that basically flipped everything and looked like the Lobos were really, really in trouble from that point. Humphrey also had a 34-yarder. Tommy Mellott, the quarterback from Butte America, had a touchdown and a 17-yard scamper as well. So just a lot of big rushing plays for the Bobcats. That's something that New Mexico is definitely going to have to do some work on if this team is going to be competitive moving forward this season. Missed opportunity. The regular season win total was 1.5 for New Mexico, and this would have been a big one. Get halfway there. Nevertheless, I will say that New Mexico, and this will also lead us into the next game that we're going to talk about. Feel the same way about Nevada and its performance under new head coach Jeff Choate. Both of these teams I think it was pretty clear that they were playing hard. And I know I talk a lot of numbers, or I spewed a bunch of percentages and percentiles and all that. And so usually I don't spend a lot of time looking at things like oh, how much does this team want it? But I've said before, and we'll say again, and I think it was fairly clear for both New Mexico and Nevada, that sometimes when you get a new head coach, there are a lot of growing pains, and that's something that we will see in a lot of cases this year. But also sometimes you get a real shot of energy, and sometimes a new coach can come in and install still more belief than the previous coaching regime for whatever reason. And it seems like that maybe is the case at both New Mexico and Nevada. Bronco Mendenhall has had a lot of success as a head coach. Jeff Choate has been around a lot of successful programs, was in a college football playoff last year with Texas. Also was the head coach at Montana State, helped turn that program into one of the powers at the FCS level. And both New Mexico and Nevada were playing with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of heart, playing hard, looked like different teams. Can they get over these heartbreaking losses and these missed opportunities in week one to capitalize on that, keep building? I said on the tailgate, our Saturday morning pregame college fantasy football show on the Campus to Canton YouTube channel, that I expect both New Mexico and Nevada to be much improved over the course of the season. I didn't expect them to look this much improved in week one, but I think both do have the potential to get better each game, and maybe they won't sneak up on as many teams moving forward, because both played pretty well for the most part in week one, even though New Mexico, statistically speaking, struggled quite a bit. Both teams, I think, are going to be competitive this year, and I think we got a first good glimpse at that. Speaking of Nevada, they were either tied or ahead in all but the final 1 minute and 18 seconds against SMU. Looked like just a much different team. Similar to what we said about Georgia Tech. I feel like this Nevada sort of strategy coming in, the game plan was also to slow down and limit the opportunities of what we expected to be an explosive SMU offense. The Mustangs, as we've discussed a lot in our preseason here on the show and the CFB Winning Edge podcast and elsewhere, SMU in our rankings is very high. They are 16th currently in our FBS power rankings. I think they were 15th when this game kicked off. That felt a little too high, and it certainly looked like it in week 0, game 1 against Nevada. This SMU offense struggled early, took a little while to get going. And Preston Stone, the starting quarterback, coming off of an injury, did not look, I don't want to say fully healthy, but just looked like he still had some rust, looked like a player who was still working his way back from a long extended time off. Didn't participate in spring practice, wasn't available for most of winter workouts, and took a little while, I think, to get up to speed, maybe even in fall camp. There was some discussion coming in that Kevin Jennings, the backup quarterback who led this SMU team to an American championship game win over Tulane with Stone sidelined, that Jennings had earned the opportunity to play, and he did get a few drives in this game. But Stone struggled a bit early, had a pick. What was it? The first drive, right? But settled in, especially in the second half. Ended up with 254 passing yards. That actually went higher than the underdog posted line, as we discussed on the tailgate and towards the end of our show on Friday. So he was able to get there, had a beautiful game-winning touchdown pass, his connection with RJ Maryland, who was maybe the week 0 Heisman winner. Maryland, the tight end, 8 catches, 162 yards, and that 49-yard touchdown. But Stone, for the most part, the numbers may be a tiny bit misleading. They're not spectacular. Finished 17 for 30 for 254 yards, 8.5 yards per pass attempt, that 1 touchdown, that 1 pick. But still, even those numbers seem maybe a little bit better than it felt for most of that game. The only real, standout, memorable throw to me was that touchdown to Maryland, and it was pretty perfect. So it's a great time to have it if you're Stone and if you're SMU. But Stone struggled a bit, and it was understandable why maybe Jennings is going to get some playing time. He didn't have a ton of opportunities, but was 4 of 5 for 54 yards, 10.8 yards per pass attempt. Small sample, but that's an elite number. That's what you're hoping for. So wouldn't be surprised. And it sounds like, according to head coach Rhett Lashley after the game, the expectation is that Jennings is going to get some more playing time. Coming in, we were a little unsure how that running back pecking order would be. I think we actually had Jalen Knighton slotted in as the number 1 running back in our depth chart projections at CFB Winning Edge on our team profiles. Knighton ended up with only 4 carries, which were fewer than not only Preston Stone, the starting quarterback coming off of injury, but LJ Johnson Jr., who I believe got the first carry of the game. He had 9 for 19 yards and a touchdown. But Brashard Smith, the former wide receiver converted to running back transfer from Miami, ended up carrying the heaviest workload, kind of emerged in the second half as the go-to guy at that position. He had 11 carries for 67 yards and a touchdown. So at this point in our depth chart projections, we do still have LJ. We replaced Knighton, I should say, with LJ Johnson early in the game. Once it was clear that Knighton is sort of wasn't getting very many opportunities, and Johnson did get that start, but put Brashard Smith in the number 2 spot and be tempted maybe to move him ahead of Johnson. A big surprise to me, and we'll discuss how our numbers fared in those stat projections, but I was very optimistic that Jake Bailey was going to be much bigger part of the passing attack. He didn't have a single catch in the game, so that certainly was a disappointment. But RJ Maryland, absolutely the key player, the biggest performer in this matchup, came up big there at the end. For Nevada, mentioned that they had a lead for the most of this game. Brendan Lewis, passing numbers not great. 14 of 26, 132 yards, only 5.1 yards per attempt. That is quite poor, but did have 2 touchdowns. Also was a productive runner, as somewhat expected. That's definitely a strength of his skill set. He had 77 yards on 18 carries. Savion Red, this was also a little bit of a surprise compared to our preseason depth chart projections, and also actually the depth chart that Nevada put out prior to this game. It had Sean Dollars listed as the top running back. Instead, Savion Red got the start, ended up having the most carries among the running backs. Had 12 carries for 30 yards and a touchdown, but Dollars did factor in quite a bit. Had 11 carries, 39 yards, did go slightly higher on the rushing yardage prop there. So that ended up working out, even though our numbers were not quite right there as far as the expected workload that Dollars was going to get. At the wide receiver position, Cortez Braham Jr. Was the leader with 66 yards and a touchdown on 4 catches. Jaden Smith, the 6'6" target, also had 4 catches, but for only 32 yards. So Nevada, as far as, again, those post-game numbers go, this statistically maybe not quite as close as the final score, not quite as close as the game felt in real time. SMU had a 91% post-game win expectancy number, according to collegefootballdata.com, going through the game on paper advanced box score. A lot of purple on the Nevada side. They were either 25th percentile or lower in EPA per play, success rate, yards per play, EPA per dropback, EPA per rush, yards per dropback, explosive play rate, and the worst of the group, and this was just a trend all day, defensive run stuff rate, where they were first percentile, 15% there. That was also an area where SMU struggled, 13%, 0 on the percentile range there. But SMU was much better in several key areas. They were at the 50th percentile or better in EPA per play, success rate, yards per play, EPA per dropback, and yards per dropback, as well as red zone success rate, where both teams were 50% in that mark. So SMU did struggle creating explosive plays. They had the same numbers as Nevada, 6%, 24th percentile there. SMU also struggled EPA per rush at minus 0.21 there. 16th percentile is actually worse than Nevada, which was 0.14 in the 25th percentile, negative 0.14 in the 25th percentile. So not a blowout by any stretch, statistically speaking, but understandably, this was a game that Nevada did not earn that victory, weren't able to finish the job, weren't able to get that, what would have been a huge upset. Going back to our projections, we were 0-2 on the point spread projections in our team strength model. We had SMU favored by 30 and didn't get anywhere close to that. Obviously, SMU was favored by 24.5 according to the odds makers. Now, I will say, different than our Talent Edge and our Prism numbers, we did have did have Nevada expected to cover in both of those models, and so we weren't 0 for the entire day, because we do have 3 different point spread projection models, and actually Talent Edge for our official projections, which were slightly different because of some line change on the Friday show. Before the Friday show, we were 1-1 in our Talent Edge model. We were 2-0, or excuse me, we were 2-0 in our Talent Edge model. We were 1-1 in our Prism model. So our talent only projections were the best of the bunch in a small sample. Our stats only projections got 1 win, but what should be our strongest model, our team strength model, actually ended up 0-2 on the day. Final FBS game of week 0, Hawaii hosted Delaware State, kicked off midnight on the East Coast, a little later than usual for an early season matchup for the Rainbow Warriors, and started out, looked like Hawaii was in pretty good shape. Even though they did swap punts the 2 teams on the first 2 drives, Hawaii scored a quick touchdown with its second drive that finished with 11-yard Braden Shager pass, who completed it to Tamatoa Mokiao Altamalala, who stepped up and made a couple of nice catches for the Rainbow Warriors during this game, which was impacted by weather. If you weren't able to see it, weather, weren't able to make it until the early hours on the East Coast, or struggled to find a way to watch it. By the way, Hawaii home games, the Team One Sports app is the way to do it. But Hawaii was dealing, with some high winds, some rain, especially in the second quarter. Also, as the broadcast discussed, a little bit of timing issues as this Hawaii offense has continued to evolve under Timmy Chang. It is now more of the traditional old school run and shoot that came was popular in the 1990s, and then in the 2000s. Hawaii used under June Jones in its real heyday for success on the football field. The last couple of years, it's been a little bit of a hybrid, because even though Timmy Chang played in the run and shoot, put up huge numbers as a quarterback there, during his coaching career had been a little bit more of an air raid, come up through the air raid system, and had been with Jay Norvell at Nevada as maybe the biggest influence potentially on Chang as far as the system that he's implemented early in his head coaching career at Hawaii. And in the last couple of years, they've had some run and shoot elements of the offense, but it's been more of a blend with the run and shoot and the air raid. Well, now it's back to kind of the traditional way of doing it, a little bit of old school, which involves a lot more as far as option routes, and there really does need to be more timing. The quarterback and the receivers have to be really in sync on timing, and also reading the defense, which will indicate or help determine what route actually the wide receivers end up running. So I think that was part of it. The weather was a little bit part of it, but also game one a little bit. But there are certainly some concerns out there that this Hawaii team, just from a pure talent standpoint, still is got a long way to go. I mean, the Rainbow Warriors are 125th in our FBF power rankings, roster strength wise, 118th overall, 112th on the offensive side of the ball. So should we expect Hawaii just on any day to go out and score 35 or 40 or 50 points? Maybe not. But with this style of offense, and especially going up against a Delaware State program, which came in ranked 111th, I believe it was, in our 122nd, excuse me, even worse, in our FCS team strength power ratings, and Hawaii was favored by 40. We had a predicted final score of 51-3. Had Hawaii expected to win this game by a huge margin, and it just did not play out that way. So was it Hawaii struggling? Was it a lack of talent? Could make an argument for multiple things, but overall got the win. Were able to separate in the second half. Got a big play on special teams with a punt return for a touchdown by Tylan Haynes, who, even though Haynes only played, I think, 7 snaps on offense, the former running back, now wide receiver, looked like the most explosive player on the field, in my opinion. Would expect him to be a little bit more involved on offense early. Quarterback Brandon Shager completed 17 of 34 passes for 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 6 yards per pass attempt, which is not what you want. Don't want 6 yards there. Definitely want to be more, at least 8, 9, 10, especially in a game where you've got a significant talent edge like Hawaii did against Delaware State. Shager did also have 2 rushing touchdowns, so totaled 4 touchdowns. Ended up looking like a decent night for him, but it was far from perfect. Wasn't smooth. Shager did show some production. Did produce as a runner, at 38 rushing yards and the 2 touchdowns on 10 carries. Landon Sims took on the heaviest workload at running back. Also had 10 carries for 58 yards. Had a 29-yarder there as well. Even though the carries, Cam Barfield, backup transfer from Boston College, had just 1 attempt for 9 yards. David Cordero had 2 attempts for 9 yards. Cordero actually got a lot more time as far as snaps on the field. So that's something maybe to be aware of there. We did expect Barfield to be the number 2 running back, and it didn't necessarily look like that. Also, the depth chart itself, the offensive line ended up not looking like the depth chart that Hawaii released earlier in the week. So that's something to keep in mind, especially this week and Monday as we record, as a lot of those depth charts start to come out from across the country. But as far as the receiving core goes, Pafele Ashlock led with 81 yards and 5 catches. Also, a little bit of bad luck. Had a pass that looked like the wind knocked it down and kind of threw off Ashlock's stability, where he should have had just a wide open catch that carried him into the end zone. Instead, kind of had to go down to a knee and ended up down at the 1-yard line, and then Shager punched it in on the next play. So a little bit of bad luck from a fantasy perspective there for Ashlock's stat line, but 81 catches, or excuse me, 81 yards on 5 catches, led the team. Dekel Crowdus, the transfer from Kentucky, who was not projected to be a starter, or at least not listed as a starter on the official depth chart. He was a big part of the action, especially early on. Ended up 5th or 6th in snaps as far as the receivers go, but good numbers, 3 catches, 49 yards, that first touchdown, or excuse me, second touchdown. Mokio Atamalala had the first touchdown. He had just 2 catches, 30 yards, and then spread the love around from that point among the 17 completions that Shager had. It looks like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different receivers. So that's not a major surprise there. But Hawaii needed a big play on special teams, needed to pull away a little bit in the second half to make this sort of I don't know if respectable is the right word, but to make it look like a little bit easier victory, 35-14, than it actually looked, where Delaware State was able to pull even early in the third quarter after Hawaii jumped out to that 14-0 lead. But so that is our recap, very long-winded there. In future weeks, hopefully we'll be able to go a little bit quicker. But did want to note our stat projections that we put these in the Discord. I know we touched on some of them on Friday, but actually had a little bit of a graphic with all of our projections compared to the underdog higher or lower lines. We were 2 for 2 on the passing yardage numbers. We got the correct DJU under and Preston Stone higher there, but we're wrong on Haynes King and Brandon Lewis. Our rushing numbers, we ended up with a solid 6 and 2. We missed out. We were higher for Roydell Williams and also for Jalen Knighton. Those ended up not coming close, but elsewhere things went according to plan for us. And then as far as receiving yardage numbers go, we were 4 and 3, or 5 and 3. 5 and 3. Had Jamal Haynes and Singleton there for Georgia Tech, also Rutherford. So those all went according to plan. Benson and Douglas as well for Florida State. Got them all wrong on the SMU Nevada side of things. And the one I felt the best about, Jake Bailey, had 0 receiving yards. We had him going higher than 40.5. But overall, felt okay, even though we were 0-2 on both our team strength projections and our totals. Missed both the over and the under officially on those FBS versus FBS games. The Talent Edge model, as I said, ended up going 2-0 officially. The Prism model 1-1. But then when we incorporate some of the FCS projections, it ended up being not quite as bad maybe as it felt at times. Ended up getting 2 of those correct for the team strength model, so it ended up being 2 and 5 there. Talent Edge model ended up 4 and 3 overall with the FCS versus FCS factored in, 4 and 3 also with the Prism, and 4 and 3 on the totals over and under with those FCS games factored in as well. But as always, as we said at the time, those are not official in our record keeping purposes. We only care about FBS versus FBS games there. So a few notes for the rest of the week. On Saturday, Virginia announced that Anthony Calandria had beaten out Tony Muskett to be the starting quarterback for the Cavaliers. At Oklahoma, Brent Venables said that wide receiver Nick Anderson has been limited and is, quote, day-to-day this week, and, quote, has a chance to play against Temple on Friday. So not necessarily the most positive expectation for whether or not we're going to see Anderson projected as a starter for the Sooners. I know Oklahoma does have a depth chart that is out now. We are going to be making a lot of updates to those as far as the to our team profiles based on that. Anderson was actually slotted in as a number 2 wide receiver on that official depth chart, but Maybe that has something to do with the injury and his lack of availability, it would seem, in practice. And also looking ahead to the week. Week 0, of course, kicks off on Thursday. Quite a few of these games are FCS versus FBS opponents, but we've got Rutgers kicking off first against Howard. Rutgers kind of a little bit of a buzzy team. We're going to get an hour of the Scarlet Knights, before anybody else kicks off to look at Kyle Monangai and that group. NC State also kicks off on Thursday, number 24 in the AP poll. Number 11, Missouri plays Murray State. Number 22, Kansas plays Lindenwood. But the big game of the Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time, North Carolina travels to Minnesota. In that same window, we've also got Colorado against FCS powerhouse North Dakota State. And then the only other FBS versus FBS matchup, along with the Carolina-Minnesota game, Coastal Carolina and Jacksonville State kick off. But number 12, Utah is going to be on late Thursday evening as well. We'll also get to see teams like Illinois, Tulane, Toledo, Arkansas, several MAC teams, UCF kicking off as well, our current leader in the Big 12 power rating. So Thursday night, a lot of action, not a ton of, headline grabbing matchups, but it's great to have college football back. Of course, week 0, it's going to be hard to replicate just the excitement of those first few games, how close they were, the one major upset, and then of course the missed opportunities and narrow escape of an SMU and for Montana State against New Mexico. But great to have college football back. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will be back on Wednesday. We'll do our week 1 preview on Wednesday. Our projections, CFB Winning Edge projections, will be published to the Campus to Canton Discord, C2C Winning Edge tier channels on Tuesday, both stat projections and our game projections there. So if you haven't already, please do like this video. Please subscribe to the Campus to Canton YouTube channel. And, if you're interested in those projections and our team profiles, our returning production database as well, we hope you would consider C2C Winning Edge or all 22 tier membership at campuscanton.com. So that is going to do it for us today. Hope everyone enjoyed week 0. Looking forward to an action-packed Thursday to Monday, week 1. We'll be back on Wednesday for Good Morning College Football. I'm Nicholas Ian Allen of CFB Winning Edge, campuscanton.com. Until then, take care.